Dust chokes the vaulted hall as a Roman legionary's torch flickers, and the scholars of Alexandria watch their scrolls curl in the heat. It is 48 BCE, the city swarms with soldiers, and the world's greatest collection teeters on the edge of a moment that will later be mythologized as a single blaze. Yet the true story of the library's demise stretches across 3 centuries, a series of decisions, neglects and ideological clashes that erased knowledge page by page. The dream began under Ptolemy Isota, a Macedonian general who claimed the throne of Egypt after Alexander the Great's death. He gathered scholars from across the Hellenic world, offering them patronage and a place to translate works from Greek, Egyptian, Persian and beyond. The royal decree that created the museum, a research institute, also mandated that any ship docking in Alexandria surrender its books for copying. In the bustling harbor, dock workers would unload papyrus bundles, and scribes in the library's scriptorium would labor by lamplight, their ink smelling of soot and citrus. The air was thick with the scent of papyrus, reed, and the faint tang of the Mediterranean. By the time of Ptolemy II, the collection had swelled to a size that ancient authors described as immeasurable, though modern estimates range widely from a few 100,000 to over 1 million scrolls. The first crack in the edifice was not a flame but bureaucracy. The library depended on continuous royal funding, and each new ruler brought a different attitude toward scholarship. When Ptolemy III ascended, his military campaigns in the east diverted resources, and the staff of copyists was reduced. Scholars who remained complained of the coldness of the palace, a metaphor for dwindling support. The scrolls, stored in vaulted chambers lined with limestone, required constant humidity control. Without regular maintenance, the papyrus began to yellow and the ink to flake. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of water damage in the later layers of the site, suggesting that neglect allowed mold to spread. A second blow came from the very empire that had once protected the city. Julius Caesar's civil war reached Alexandria in 48 BCE. Historical accounts describe a fire that consumed parts of the royal quarter after Caesar's forces set the ships in the harbor ablaze to block Cleopatra's fleet. The blaze leapt to nearby warehouses, and some ancient writers note that the flames reached the shelves where the scrolls rested. Modern scholars debate the extent of the damage, but the consensus is that the fire destroyed only a portion of the storage rooms, not the entire library. What is clear is that the incident forced the curators to relocate many scrolls to safer chambers, a process that inevitably led to loss. Fragile papyrus cracked, and some volumes were left behind in the chaos. After the Roman annexation, Augustus granted the library a new patron, but the imperial focus shifted toward legal codices and military logistics. The once vibrant community of philosophers and poets dwindled, replaced by bureaucrats concerned with tax records. The famous scholar-administrator Zenodotus, who had overseen the first systematic cataloguing, was succeeded by less vigorous heads. By the 1st century CE, the library's reputation survived more in reputation than in the physical presence of its shelves. Travelers like Strabo noted that the great store of books remains, though many of the original volumes have been taken to Rome or lost to neglect. The third beat in this slow decline arrives under the reign of Emperor Theodosius I, whose edicts in the late 4th century aimed to suppress pagan worship. The Serapeum, a sister temple that housed part of the library's collection, became a target. In 391 CE, a mob, emboldened by imperial decree, stormed the temple, tearing statues and setting fire to the annexed reading rooms. Contemporary chroniclers describe the sound of collapsing columns and the smell of burning incense mixing with the acrid odor of papyrus. Yet even here, the destruction was selective. The Serapeum's archive contained many works that had been duplicated elsewhere, and the fire primarily consumed secondary copies and local commentaries. Scholars now believe that the most valuable scrolls had already been transferred to private collections or hidden in subterranean vaults before the attack. At this point the narrative seems to converge on a single cataclysm, but the turn arrives when we examine the later Arabic sources. The famed historian al-Makrizi, writing centuries after the Muslim conquest of Alexandria in 642 CE, records that the conquerors entered a city where the great house of learning lay in ruins, its shelves empty, its scholars dispersed. He does not describe a massive conflagration but rather an abandoned complex, its stone walls cracked, its corridors filled with dust. Archaeological surveys of the site reveal layers of occupation that show the library's buildings were repurposed as warehouses and later as a fort. The evidence points to a gradual abandonment. Roof tiles fell, floors collapsed, and the once careful climate control gave way to the desert wind. By the time Arab administrators catalogued the city's assets, the library existed only as a memory, its remnants scavenged for building material. The final beat is the modern aftermath. In the 19th century, European explorers uncovered fragments of papyri in the sand dunes near the ancient harbor. These fragments, bearing the faint ink of Greek philosophers, confirmed that some scrolls had survived the centuries of neglect, hidden in sealed jars. Yet the majority of the library's catalogue, the famous Pinakes compiled by the librarian Callimachus, is known only through later references. Historians estimate that the loss includes works on astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and literature that could have altered the trajectory of scientific thought. The question that haunts scholars today is not whether a single fire destroyed the library, but how many generations of administrators, soldiers, zealots, and opportunists chose to let it decay. As the sun sets over the ruins of the ancient harbor, the stone columns that once supported shelves now stand silent. The wind carries the faint scent of salt and the imagined rustle of papyrus that never will be read. The Library of Alexandria did not fall in a dramatic blaze, it withered, piece by piece, under the weight of political change, fiscal neglect, and cultural shifts. Its death was a slow erosion, a reminder that knowledge can vanish not only through catastrophe but through the quiet choices of those who inherit it. What other treasures lie beneath the dust of forgotten halls, waiting for a future generation to wonder what might have been?